Welcome, everybody, to Conversations with Career Coaches. I'm Terrence Seamon. On behalf of the St. Matthias Employment Ministry, I'd like to welcome you to today's conversation with David Schuchman. David, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Hi, everyone.
David Schuchman and I have known each other for a few years. He was very generous to invite me a few times to speak to one of the job search support groups that he is involved with. Professionally, David is the head of his own IT consulting company called Princeton Technology Advisors. He's an IT professional with a true passion for technology, implementation, IT operations, and so much more. Truly a seasoned information technology guy. I know David from his other work, where he is, for example, the current executive chair of the Professional Service Group of Mercer County. One of the, in my view, as somebody who gets to a lot of local groups, one of the best community programs for people who are in career transition, providing them with networking, providing them with training, providing them with a place to go, even a virtual place to go, right, during the pandemic, where they're not alone during their career transition. So it's really a pleasure to be here today with David. We have a small live audience with us here today as well. And I want to encourage those who are here to ask questions along with the questions that I'm planning to ask David about our topic for today, which is consulting a viable career option in today's marketplace? So David, you define a consultant as anyone who has an area of expertise, a service, a solution that they can offer to others, which I love as a definition. I know I paraphrased a little bit, but I love that because what that says to me is that just about any one of us experienced professionals could be a consultant.
Yeah, that's right. That's my observation. And, sometimes they even say, as a consultant, we're a hitman. We go in for a job, we do the job, and we leave when it's over. And you generally work under a fixed contract. You know what the term is going to be usually and what the responsibilities are. And you're being hired for your expertise and the needs of the client.
Now, David, you're an expert in this area of helping people with consulting as a career path. You do a full-blown presentation on this, which I've actually taken 2 times. And it's very, very informative, very, very detailed, and recorded versions are available on the internet for anyone who would like to go ahead and view them. I'm going to ask you toward the end of our conversation to give a couple of places people can go to find that. So I'd like to just zoom in on a few questions and then invite Jürgen and Lisa, our audience members, if they have a question or two they'd like to ask.
Sure.
So what I'm curious about, David, is if someone is in a career transition mode at the moment and they're thinking about consulting, how would they determine whether consulting is right for them? Because I don't think it's necessarily the right career path for everyone.
Sure. And we need to think of consulting really 2 different ways. And some of it may be better for some people than both or the other way. So one is you're actually fully employed by a company that puts you on contract with their clients. And so your relationship working-wise is a full-time employee, except you may be working for a different one of their clients for a short period of time. But it's really very similar. The other, and it's more of the path I took, is being independent. I have my own company as an IT services organization. And so in that case, you wear all the hats. You have to find the work, make the relationships with the client, and then do the work, and also do the billing and all that other stuff as well. And how do you decide if it's good for you? Well, for one thing is, if you're not getting interviews and you want the full-time job, if you're not getting interviews, or if you're getting that first interview and maybe you're just not getting past the HR manager or the recruiter, or even past the first interview with the hiring manager, maybe it's time to think of consulting as an alternative to the traditional full-time employment. And you may say, no, 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 I need benefits. Well, if you're not working, you're paying for benefits out of pocket or out of your bank account. But if you're consulting, even if it's a 6-month contract, you're getting paid. And so you may look at this as a way to be an alternative to full-time employment.
All those hats that you mentioned, David, I think that's sometimes what takes the wind out of a person's sails, because they look at themselves in the mirror and they say, you know, I can't do billing, I can't do marketing, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. How did you discern this pathway for yourself? Did you have all the hats, David, or did I'm curious, how did you reach the decision that you made to start your own company?
You know, going into it, I didn't know all the hats I may need. I certainly was very comfortable as a technologist, and I knew what I was good at professionally in technology, because technology, like a lot of careers, is very big. And so I just thought, I'll go find someone who needs some of this. But I did discover along the way there were things that I would have to do. And so I kind of learned them as I went along. I realized I had all those skills, but I didn't know I needed them. So the hats were all in my back pocket, not knowing which one I would have to pull out. And even though I said wear all the hats, this is not overwhelming. You know, there's so much that we do in our day-to-day job when we're working full-time, and we had a lot of things that we had to do. Well, now this is the same thing. You have a lot of things, and they're different things. And so, yeah, you mentioned the presentation I have. It's called How to Work as a Consultant in the Gig Economy. And I just kind of lay it out. And it was really based on my path. What did I discover along the way? And the presentation is really, we're just friends talking. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an insurance specialist.
Right.
You know, but I just, you know, if you ask me like any of these questions, what was your experience? This is my experience. And that's what the presentation's about. So thank you for inviting me today to share some of my observations.
No, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's something that I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about myself, and was very much looking forward to making that leap myself some years ago, and have not regretted it at all. And the approach that I've taken is more your first approach, working for other companies as a consultant. I've now worked for about 4 different companies as a consultant, so I have a portfolio life, as some might say. But it's really great.
Yeah, and that works out well for a lot of people, because, you know, the quote unquote management of the business is not needed. Again, you're employed by whatever ABC consulting company, and they, you know, find the gigs, and they, you know, find the talent, which is you or the other people in their organization, and they'll place you to do the job. Yeah.
Again, continuing to just sort of zoom in on a couple of points that I'm sort of interested in. I know others are too. And when I say that, I'm thinking about my clients that I'm working with right now. Let's say someone in a career transition has gone through the discernment of different approaches to consulting, is really feeling called to make the leap, and they go ahead and they make the leap. What would you say are your top tips, 3-4 top tips for that person to get started on the path toward becoming a successful consultant?
Oh, sure. Well, certainly you have to be willing to say, I am a consultant, and be willing to accept that that's the approach you're going to have to working. When you're hired as a consultant, or when you market yourself as a consultant, it's a little bit different than when you market yourself as a full-time employee. Because as a consultant, your client is hiring you for your expertise, your knowledge, your experience. So you really need to identify a niche in the marketplace where you can be most effective to your clients.
Yes.
When you're hired as an employee, often what happens is they like, or they accept that you may have most of the responsibilities and most of the skills, and a few of them they may say, you know what, we just like this person so much, we'll teach them what's missing. But as a consultant, you're really expected to come in with a lot of that expertise. So make sure you understand your niche. Try not to be a generalist. And then understand your target market, you know, what's important to them. And you'll also have to find a support network. So, you know, think about when you were working full-time in a company and you were stumped with something, either the client asked a question or you got stumped on a task, you had coworkers you can ask, or your boss, or people in other departments. And so when you're working independently, you have to find some of those resources on your own. They could be former colleagues, Google searches get a lot of it, or YouTube searches. So, I'd say make sure you understand what your support network is as well.
I love those tips, David. And interestingly, your third tip of find that support network is a nice look ahead to next month's guest on Conversations with Career Coaches. And that's Kathy McCafferty-Smith, who is going to be speaking with us about forming your own board of directors. So just a little commercial for next month. I'll have my son take that out.
That's a terrific topic as well. I've
Yeah.
seen other
No,
people talk about it, and
Yeah.
it does help people be very effective in their job search.
Yes. So thanks for those three key tips. I want to invite one of our audience members, Jürgen Heberling, to come into the conversation at this point, if he's comfortable, because I know he really has a related question for you, David.
Okay.
So hi. So now that I am striking out on my own, my biggest issue is, how do I market my services, and to whom do I market them?
You need to understand what your niche really needs to be.
Right.
And, CPAs, if you want to go into corporate accounting, you don't need a CPA. If you want to go into personal accounting, you want to market the CPA. So you have to figure out what you really enjoy doing, especially since you're kind of a semi-retired person. And so in terms of a marketing plan, you can kind of create your own marketing plan, not one that you hand out to everybody. And I would call it more of a business plan. And don't get scared by that term. There are two types of business plans. One is a very thick binder with a tremendous amount of information that talks about your projected growth and your revenue and how you're approaching clients, and just really intense. Well, if you're not going to go for venture capital or banking money, you don't need one like that. You may just take a yellow pad and make a list of the types of businesses, maybe not the specific individual companies, but the types of businesses that your services would be best suited. And the types of services that are you can provide the most value. And then you can begin to hone and target how and what you should promote. Because otherwise, again, you're a generalist. And my observation, and I mentioned it earlier, is as a consultant, we don't always want generalists. We want the expertise. Maybe focus only on one industry. Could be the one you enjoy the most, or the one where you spent the most time. And once you begin to know that, now you can begin to start to look for places where you can begin to market yourself. So I'm apologizing right now if I just call you an accountant, and that's not exactly what you are, but let's just use that as an example.
It's not.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. But let's use that as an example. I think a mistake, and I made it, and a lot of people do when they start out. So I went to a lot of these networking groups for IT people, thinking I'll meet more IT people. But what I learned and I figured out was those were my competitors. Those were not my customers. So it may not be the case that you'll go to financial services or accounting or FP&A type organizations. Not that that's bad. That's where you can build your support network, but it's not likely where you'll build your customer base. Or if you were looking for full-time employment or working for an organization like that, you could. But if you want independent clients, you need to go find the organizations where clients hang out, the industry that you're focusing on, and those types of people. So that would be one. It could be professional associations. It could be conferences, again, in the industry you want to serve. It could be meetup groups. And Meetup, of course, is not the world's largest dating website. It is a networking website to find networking groups. And so look for groups that match your profile that you're looking to target. And what's nice with Meetup is it will begin to let you know their groups. Let your professional network know, former coworkers, your accountant, your lawyer, person who cuts your hair. I mean, whatever is important, let people know, because you never know who they know.
Right.
And there are also business networking groups. There's a bunch of them that are out there. There are a couple of big ones. One is called BNI, Business Networking International. Another is called LATIP. And there are smaller ones. I used to belong to a couple smaller ones. And the way they work is anyone who is a member of a chapter is the only one of that profession. And so if you have 10, 20, 30 members in the group, all of different professions, then you have your own referral network. And so, someone who may be, in the, credit card processing service may go out and meet a customer, and their customer says, hey, do you know someone who could help me with my finances? And maybe they'll say, oh yeah, Jürgen is somebody. And then they make those connections. So you'll get your network to work for you. So those are some ideas for where you can begin to find and begin to generate business.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. So let me underscore, I'm not an accountant. The reason I work for a CPA firm is because I was doing information security assessments, and the SOC assessments, SOC,
Oh, yeah.
not X, requires a signature by a CPA.
Okay, yep. So, and we can talk more offline about that as well. But I think even though I was using accounting, if you use it just as an analogy or as an example, I think the example of it works well. So you may be looking for security professionals or accounting companies that are mid-size that may have security concerns because it's more than 1 or 2 people. And so they have to manage that. Maybe they themselves have clients that need your type of assistance. So you can partner with them and they can subcontract you.
Okay, thank you.
Great answer, David, and great question, Jürgen. If I could just throw my 2 cents on there with regarding groups to network with, there are thousands of groups on LinkedIn. So I would encourage you to search for relevant groups relevant to the focus of your consulting business. Join those groups that look good to you and become an active participant. Show up, add your voice, ask some interesting questions, and you'll find that you'll start to create a community of interest around your consulting idea.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to invite our other audience member, Lisa. Hi there, Lisa. If you had a question about consulting that you wanted to ask David, since we have a nice, small, intimate group here, I'm curious if there is something on your mind, or even just a comment about the consulting route.
I was in advertising and media for roughly 35 years, and I was laid off a little over 2 years ago, just before the pandemic started. I have a folder that has hundreds of applications that I've sent out. In this industry, there is a lot of ageism that goes on.
Sure.
They want younger, they want whatever. And so even though I've adjusted my resume, that you can still tell by my resume that I've got at least 25 years of experience. And so, while I continue to put applications in, my hope for getting back into that industry in a full-time basis has basically evaporated.
So
And
you're thinking about alternatives?
Yep.
One observation I have is, this is, my view, don't hide your age on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is if you get successful and you get into an interview situation, and that's when they figure out that you're older than they think is appropriate, you spent a lot of time and effort with no possibility of success. So that's my opinion. Part of it is, the 35-year-old manager doesn't know how to manage someone as old as their mom or dad. And so that's on them. Unfortunately, it's harder for us. But on the other hand, older employees are more expensive, not because of our salary, because if they're going to say the job is $75,000, then that's the job. That's not more expensive regardless of your age. But what happens is, as the average age of the employee pool increases, so if they hire more older people and the average age goes from 30 to 40, back-end expenses and benefit expenses, those go up for a company. And so they're trying to manage that. In other words, life insurance costs go up. Medical insurance, dental insurance costs go up. And since companies try and pay for part of that for their employees, it's expensive for them. So that's another thing. So how do you combat that? Companies want you. You have years of experience that someone much younger than you just isn't going to have. You've seen more, you've been there, you've done that. You don't have a WTF when the stuff hits the fan. You've seen that before. You won't panic. And companies need that. So how do they bring on or onboard someone who's, let's say 50 plus without incurring the back end costs? And the way to do it is bring you on as a contractor, because you don't show up in their employee pool. Now, there's no guarantee that the contract is going to last more than 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, the length of the project. And so that will be more on you. On the other hand, in today's job market, there's no guarantee you're going to keep your job for another 10 years because it's an at-will employment. So be open to a consulting mindset, because they can bring you on. That's that hitman kind of thing that I said a little bit earlier. And they want your expertise, your years of experience, the connections you have, all that to make them successful. And they don't have to worry about if bringing you on as a contractor ultimately raises some of their back-end expenses.
As you know, there's a lot of discussion right now about how a person should portray a career gap. And in that discussion, often what comes up is, well, you should be out there consulting. And that's a great way to fill a career gap. To me, I think it's a little too glib, because as I'm sure you would say, consulting is very involved. It's a very involved thing. You don't just, wave a magic wand and turn yourself into a consultant. But what are your thoughts quickly on using consulting to bridge a gap in one's career?
Well, it takes 3 seconds to say, I am a consultant. Or 2 seconds. Right. So that's almost as good as the magic wand. But certainly, consulting is a way to fill a gap on a resume and fill a gap on LinkedIn. One thing, in order to have a 100% complete profile on LinkedIn, you have to have a current position. Yes. And if you were let go from your prior position 6 months ago, it may be time to put an end date on that one. So put a current position that does not have an end date. And it could be called, Terry Seamon Consulting, Jürgen Consulting, Lisa Consulting, whatever you want. And it started March 2022 to present. And you may not have accomplishments yet. You may not have clients yet. Put some of your specialties. So those will have the keywords in a search.
There you go.
And you've been a consultant. You've been a consultant all this time. You just don't have a gig just yet, and you'll get that. But it will fill a gap. There is gap discrimination separate from age discrimination. Someone may say, well, if someone hasn't hired David in 6 months, why should I? I'll hire Jürgen, who's coming off of another position.
Right.
So it's senseless. I don't know why, but that's why. But that's what happens.
Let me add into the LinkedIn discussion. I mean, there's a lot of LinkedIn discussion, but superficially, what can help on the consulting side is to put up your company webpage through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That is free. It doesn't cost anything in addition to what is free for your personal LinkedIn. You have to have a personal LinkedIn first, and it has to be active for a couple of weeks before they allow you to do the company one, but you can get there.
Well, you can, in the contact information, you can put your business or personal website right away. Yeah. If you want a LinkedIn business page, the other requirement is your email address has to be tied to your domain. So you cannot have a Gmail account, as an example. So in my case, Princeton Tech Advisors, I have to have a Princeton Tech Advisors email address, because to them, that's a business. I would not be able to put, which I don't have, Princeton Tech Advisors at Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail. They don't accept those as a business email address.
How do you set something like that up?
If you contact me, I charge a cup of coffee to help my clients.
There we go.
Now, by the way, it's a large cup of coffee because we got to work at it a little while, but that's my loss leader, so I'm happy to do that. There are a couple of companies that offer that. Lots of companies, whoever you can get a domain through, like GoDaddy, HostGator, Google Domains, all those. We could talk about that offline.
Okay, I would appreciate
that. Give
or
take, $5 to $6 a month. for that. But a lot of them have startup discounts.
Okay.
David, thanks so much for being with us today on Conversations with Career Coaches. Before we go, where can folks go who want to watch your complete presentation on this topic?
Probably the easiest place to start is my website. My website is princetontechadvisors.com, all one word, no dashes, Princeton Tech, T-E-C-H, advisors.com. And on there at the bottom of just about every page is a link to my YouTube channel. So I've got lots of videos there, including one for this.
Right.
Another place is in my workshops tab. If you menu on top, if you click on the workshops, look for the link for recent workshops, and you'll get some links to other presentations there as well. And so I did this most recently, so Jürgen hasn't seen it since almost 4 years. Last month I did it for Monmouth County Workforce Development. It's not on my YouTube channel, but if you go to my workshops tab and recent programs, you can look at the one I did recently for them there.
Fantastic. David, thank you so much again. It was great. The recording of this conversation will be available soon, and I'll be promoting it via LinkedIn, Twitter, and other means. I want to thank Jürgen and Lisa for joining us today. It was a really great conversation, not only on consulting as a career option, but on other topics as well.
Yep.
Again, thank you, David. Take care, everyone. See you next month.